The day I laid my husband to rest, I knew grief would follow me. But what came next wasn't grief. It was something colder. Something that slithered beneath the words of comfort and the whispers of distant relatives. While everyone else cried, I saw her, Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. Leaning over Elijah's casket with the precision of someone rehearsed, she slid something into the inner pocket of his suit. My chest froze. The pastor's voice droned on, words about eternal rest and salvation, but all I could see was that hand, trembling just for a heartbeat, then gone. Mission accomplished. I wanted to doubt my eyes. Maybe it was a tissue. Maybe my mind was betraying me with exhaustion. But no, there was intent there. Cold, calculated intent. And the way she looked at my son afterward, like a secret shared, like a game already won. The service ended. People drifted away, leaving flowers, candles, and quiet sobs behind. I lingered, alone, drawn to the casket as if pulled by some invisible thread. My fingers shook as I reached into the jacket pocket. Something hard, rectangular. An envelope. White, folded with care, and on it my name. Celeste. I clutched it to my chest, hearing the dull thud as the coffin was closed. The sound should have marked an ending, but I knew, instinctively, that it was only the beginning. The ride home was a blur of fog and headlights, each mile dragging the weight of anticipation through my veins. The envelope burned against my chest like it carried Elijah's voice, a secret too heavy for words. At home, I finally dared open it. Inside, a folded letter in his unmistakable handwriting, and a key, dark metal, etched with the number 47. The letter was brief, but it was everything. Celeste, if you are reading this, it means I couldn't do it in person. What you believed was yours never was. Trust no one. Sometimes the closest love is the one that wounds the deepest. I reread it. Slowly, reverently. The world had narrowed to a single point. The key, the words, the mystery. And suddenly, I wasn't a widow, I was a detective. A woman with 40 years of marriage behind her and decades of secrets waiting to be unearthed. I didn't sleep that night. Shadows crawled along the walls. Every corner whispered betrayal. Every memory of Elijah, the laugh, the scent of tobacco, the softness of his hand, became a question I couldn't answer. Who had he been? And who had he betrayed, without me knowing? By dawn, I made my decision. I would follow this trail. No one would stop me. Not Vanessa, not Marcus, not even the man who had hidden half of Elijah's life from me. If the truth was buried, I would dig it up. And if it was dangerous, then so be it. Because sometimes when the dead speak through the secrets they leave behind, the living must choose ignore it or confront it. And I had chosen confrontation. The day I laid my husband to rest, I thought grief would be my only companion, but it wasn't. Not really. Something far colder moved alongside it, brushing against my skin in quiet, insidious ways. Something that didn't belong in a house of mourning, yet somehow had slipped in unnoticed. The church was crowded, yet eerily silent, every whispered condolence sounding like echoes from another life. People moved in predictable patterns, their eyes welling with tears, their hands shaking, their words rehearsed. And yet among them, one presence stood apart. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. She didn't cry. Not properly. Her eyes glimmered, not with sadness, but with intent. I remember watching her lean over the casket with a careful precision, her hand slipping into the inner pocket of Elijah's suit. My breath caught. The pastor's voice droned on, a monotone background to my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I told myself it was nothing. A tissue, perhaps. But instinct screamed otherwise. There was a deliberateness there that couldn't be mistaken. Something small, something hidden, and most certainly something that wasn't meant for me. After the service, the crowd thinned. Condolences were exchanged, hugs given and returned, but I couldn't pull my eyes away from the casket. Alone, I approached, compelled by some magnetic force I couldn't explain. My fingers brushed the fabric of Elijah's suit. Something hollow. An envelope. White, folded meticulously. And on it, my name, Celeste. I remember clutching it to my chest, the weight of it heavier than anything I'd ever held. The envelope burned against my skin, an urgent, silent scream that demanded attention. Once home, I didn't dare tear it open immediately. I paced. Shadows crawled along the walls. The hum of the refrigerator sounded too loud. The silence of the house was suffocating. Finally, I couldn't wait any longer. Inside, a folded letter in Elijah's unmistakable handwriting. And a key. Dark metal, etched with the number 47. The letter was brief but shattering. Celeste, if you are reading this, it means I couldn't do it in person. What you believed was yours never was. Trust no one. Sometimes the closest love is the one that wounds the deepest. I reread it, word by word, each one a blade sliding through the fabric of my reality. The world had narrowed into a single point. The key, the words, the secret. And suddenly, I wasn't a widow. I was a detective. A woman with 40 years of shared life behind her, now facing the unknown. I couldn't sleep. Not that night, not the next. The house seemed alive with whispers. Shadows pooled in corners, twisting into shapes my mind half recognized. Every memory of Elijah, the warmth of his hand, the quiet laughter, the smell of his favorite tobacco, was suddenly suspect. Every moment, every smile, every whispered, "I love you," could have been a lie. Morning came, but the sun brought no comfort. I examined the key, the cold metal pressing against my palm, and wondered what door it opened. And then I realized it didn't matter. What mattered was that someone or something wanted me to find it. Someone had orchestrated this, carefully, deliberately. And if they thought I would be intimidated, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I began to investigate in small steps, careful, quiet, invisible. I watched the patterns in Vanessa's life. The hours she kept. The places she went when she said she was elsewhere. The way she smiled at Marcus, my son, with a certain hidden calculation. And every answer led to more questions. I remembered the night that I had been restless. He had been whispering on the phone, late into the night, in tones I didn't recognize. I remembered his sudden trips, the files he kept hidden, the locked drawer I'd never opened. Now, each memory became a clue, a breadcrumb left for me in a labyrinth I hadn't known existed. By evening, I had made a decision. I would follow the trail. Every secret he had buried, every lie he had lived, I would uncover. I would confront Vanessa, Marcus, anyone who had played a part. And I knew, deep in the marrow of my bones, that the envelope and the key were only the beginning. Something darker was waiting, something deliberate. The first night of my investigation was long. I crept into his study, scanning the room with precision. Books, files, scattered papers, some labeled, some cryptic. Every drawer, every hidden compartment, felt like a challenge designed for me. And there it was, a small cabinet, barely noticeable, with a keyhole exactly matching the number 47. I paused, holding my breath. The lock clicked under my hand. The door opened, revealing stacks of documents, photographs, and recordings. Some of them intimate, some of them terrifying. And then I saw it, a photograph that stopped my heart. Vanessa, standing over Elijah with an unreadable expression. But behind her, in the corner, a man I didn't recognize. And then I noticed the small detail in the photograph, almost invisible, but unmistakable, the same envelope I had received. I felt the cold grip of fear tighten around me, but I forced myself to focus. This wasn't just betrayal, this was orchestration. Manipulation, and I was staring at the evidence. By the time the clock struck 2 a.m., I knew my life had changed forever. I wasn't the woman I had been that morning. I was a hunter now. Every shadow could conceal a clue, every sound could be a warning. And as I stepped back from the cabinet, I realized Elijah's death hadn't been the end. It had been the prologue. And somewhere, in the silence of the house, someone was watching, waiting. The next days blurred into a tense, vivid investigation. I moved like a ghost through my own home, retracing Elijah's steps, examining every photograph, every file, every seemingly innocuous receipt. Each discovery made my chest tighten, a mixture of rage and fear pulsing like a second heartbeat. Vanessa had started acting differently too. She lingered too long in rooms she had no reason to occupy. She smiled too perfectly at Marcus, masking her intentions. She believed I was unaware, that the envelope and the key were missteps that would never be pieced together. But she underestimated me. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. A bank statement, buried in a drawer labeled Utilities, showed a series of withdrawals and deposits too regular to be coincidence. Each transaction was for odd amounts, always around midnight, always to an account I didn't recognize. I traced the numbers, my fingers trembling over the keyboard, and there it was, a web of accounts, names, and shell companies, all interconnected, all leading back to Vanessa. My mind raced. I could feel the pieces clicking together, forming a sinister picture I hadn't imagined possible. My son, my husband, the lives we had built, threaded into a story of deceit, greed, and hidden obsession. That night, I set a trap. I left the envelope on the kitchen counter, exactly where I had found it. I stayed in the shadows of the living room, barely breathing, eyes fixed on the entrance. Hours passed. The clock ticked slowly, mercilessly, and then I saw her. Vanessa moved with the silence of a predator, her hand reaching out for the envelope. I could see her eyes narrow as she sensed the weight of my gaze. But she did not panic. She never did. Instead, she smiled, a deliberate, calculated smile, and turned back into the shadows. I knew then that she had anticipated this. Everything was planned, from the moment Elijah died down to the key, the letter, and the envelope. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a game. And we were all pieces on a board she controlled. I needed to confront her, but I couldn't do it blindly. I began recording everything. Cameras hidden in corners. Audio recorders tucked beneath furniture. Every movement she made, every word she whispered, captured for the moment I would have to act. Days passed, each one more unbearable than the last. Marcus started noticing my attention to detail, my sudden obsession with his wife's routines. He didn't confront me, but the tension between us grew, a quiet storm brewing behind polite smiles and casual conversation. And then came the call. A voice I hadn't heard in months, distorted and cautious. "I know what you found." The line went dead before I could respond. My pulse spiked. Someone else was in the game. Someone watching me. I began questioning everyone in Elijah's life. Friends, colleagues, even neighbors. Each answer led to more questions, more shadows. And with each passing hour, the sense of danger grew palpable, like static in the air before a storm. I started following Vanessa. I knew it was risky, but the hunger for answers outweighed fear. Every street she walked, every shop she entered, I was there, invisible, observing. And one evening, it happened. She entered a building I didn't recognize. A warehouse, abandoned, yet alive with whispers of activity. I lingered at the edge of the street, heart hammering. Lights flickered inside. Shapes moved in the darkness. And then I saw him. A man from the photograph, the one I hadn't recognized before. He was speaking with Vanessa, their faces close, their conversation inaudible, but their intent clear. I felt the chill of dread wash over me. The web of betrayal was larger than I had imagined. The next day, I received a package. No return address. Inside, a single photograph. Vanessa holding the envelope, standing beside the man. But there was more. On the back, written in Elijah's handwriting, "Trust is a luxury you cannot afford. Watch closely." I could feel my hands trembling, but I forced myself to focus. This wasn't fear. This was preparation. Each clue, each breadcrumb was a challenge designed for me. And I was ready to meet it. I decided to confront Vanessa directly. The plan had to be perfect. I couldn't afford mistakes. I waited until nightfall, the house bathed in shadows, every creak amplified by anticipation. I called her, my voice calm, neutral, betraying nothing. "Vanessa," I said, "we need to talk." She paused, then a slow, deliberate smile. "About what?" "About Elijah. About everything he left behind." The line went dead, and I knew, without a doubt, she would come. 2 hours later, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find her standing there, flawless, controlled, as if she had stepped out of a dream designed to trap me. Her eyes held the same calculated gleam I had seen at the funeral. We didn't speak at first. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, like the calm before a hurricane. Then she stepped inside, deliberately, and the door clicked shut behind her. "I know why you're here," she said, voice soft but commanding. "And I know what you've found." I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to meet her gaze. "Then you know why I can't leave without answers." She smiled again, that same chilling, perfect smile. "Some answers," she said, "aren't meant to be found. Some truths are dangerous." I felt it then, the first real fear. Not of her, not of what she might do, but of the revelations waiting to unfold. The game was no longer about Elijah, or even Vanessa. It was about survival. And as she moved closer, I realized I was standing at the edge of something I could not escape. A secret far darker than I had imagined. And every step, every word, every heartbeat from that moment on would determine not just the truth, but who would live to tell it. Vanessa's footsteps echoed against the hardwood floors, deliberate and precise. I stayed rooted, every muscle tense, aware that a single misstep could unravel everything. The envelope, the key to everything, rested on the table between us, a silent witness to the tension thickening the air. "You've been digging," she said. Her voice calm, almost melodic, but there was steel beneath it. "Following me. Watching me. Thinking you could catch me off guard." "I'm not thinking," I said, voice low, controlled. "I know." Her eyes flicked to the envelope, then back to mine. "Do you really want to know?" I nodded. She tilted her head as if studying me, gauging how much my fear she could taste. "Very well," she said, and in a gesture that was almost casual, she opened the envelope and pulled out a photograph. A photograph I hadn't seen before. It was Elijah, smiling, alive, but not as I remembered him. His eyes cold, calculated. There was a woman with him, the same one from the warehouse, and behind them, a building that looked familiar. Too familiar. You see? Vanessa said softly. He wasn't the man you think he was. Everything you believed, every memory, it was a story. A story I was meant to uncover. And now, you are part of it. I wanted to scream, to throw the photograph across the room, but I couldn't. The truth was crawling into my bones, searing impossible to ignore. Elijah had been hiding something, double life, a secret plan. And now, somehow, Vanessa was the keeper of it. The silence stretched, electric, until she spoke again. You think you're the only one who's suffered, but pain is currency. And right now, I'm the richest. I swallowed hard. Then why involve me? Because, she said, stepping closer, you're the only one who can finish this. The only one who can choose what happens next. Her words struck me like a blade. The room seemed to shrink around me. I realized that everything, Elijah's death, the hidden accounts, the midnight meetings, was a puzzle. And the final piece was me. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at it. Another message. No sender, just a single sentence. Trust no one, not even yourself. I felt my pulse spike. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, but curiosity and anger held me in place. I had come too far. I had seen too much. Vanessa smiled, noticing my hesitation. Time is running out, she said. Decide. Do you want the truth, or do you want peace? And before I could respond, the lights flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the room, but I could still hear her breathing, deliberate and controlled. And then, a whisper. So close it could have been in my mind. Choose wisely. Every move has a consequence. The lights flickered back on, and she was gone. Just like that, vanished. I was left alone with the envelope, the photograph, and the chilling certainty that I had stepped into a world I could never escape. I ran to the window, scanning the street, the shadows, the empty parking lot below. But there was no sign of her. Only the echo of her words, ringing in my ears. Suddenly, I noticed a small slip of paper tucked under the envelope. I picked it up. Written in the same familiar handwriting, a single line. Meet me where it all began, midnight. Come alone. My heart pounded. Midnight, the place where Elijah and I had first met. The memory of love and trust, now twisted into something dangerous. I knew I had no choice. This was the final act. The confrontation that would reveal everything. The hours until midnight passed like shards of glass. Every minute stretched, sharp and unbearable. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I prepared myself, rehearsed every word, every question I might ask, every lie I might confront. Finally, the clock struck 12. I drove through the quiet streets, every shadow a potential threat, every passing car a possible observer. And then, the building appeared, abandoned, decrepit, but somehow familiar. I stepped inside, darkness swallowed me, but my eyes adjusted. And then, there at the far end of the room, Vanessa, calm, waiting, smiling. You came, she said simply. Yes, I said, trying to steady my voice. But this ends tonight. Whatever this is ends. She laughed softly, the sound echoing against the walls. Ends, she said. No, it transforms. Every ending is just another beginning. And now, you're part of the story. I felt the weight of the room, the silence, the fear, the anticipation. Every secret, every betrayal, every hidden motive converged in this moment. And I realized, I was not just confronting Vanessa. I was confronting the truth. Then, she reached into her coat and pulled out another envelope. Everything you need to know, she said. But once you open it there's no turning back. I hesitated. The tension was unbearable. My hand shook as I reached for it. The camera of my mind recorded every detail, every shadow, every heartbeat. Finally, I opened it, and what I saw made the blood freeze in my veins. Elijah? Alive. But changed. More than I could have imagined. The web of betrayal, deception, and hidden agendas stretched farther than I had ever realized. And Vanessa, she had been orchestrating it all. The realization hit me like a storm. The story wasn't over. It was only beginning. And somewhere in the dark corners of the world, the pieces were moving, waiting for the next player to make a move. I closed the envelope, took a deep breath, and whispered to the silence, I will finish this, no matter the cost. But the shadows shifted. The game had begun, and there was no turning back.